Tonight, an American held by Iran for more than a year is finally released for health reasons. But her two friends, including her fiancé, remain in custody, accused of spying. I'm Katie Couric. Also tonight, a life insurance giant profiting from the death benefits of fallen heroes. Now it turns out the VA not only knew about it, but agreed to it. The other oil spill, Michigan homeowners say the owner of a ruptured pipeline deceived them into signing away their rights. And a photographer who won the trust of civil rights leaders is exposed as a paid FBI informant.
From CBS News World Headquarters in New York, this is the CBS Evening News with Katie Couric.
Good evening, everyone. For 3 American families, there was joy mixed with heartbreak today. Iran finally released Sarah Shourd, a native of Los Angeles, who had been held for more than a year on spy charges. She was freed for medical reasons after $500,000 in bail money was deposited in an Iranian bank. It is not clear who paid, but Iran continues to hold 2 of her friends, including her fiancé. In a moment, we'll hear from a family member, but first, Elizabeth Palmer on the latest turn in this long-running drama.
Free at last. After 410 days of imprisonment, Sarah Shourd arrived in the Gulf state of Oman, safely back in the arms of her mother. In Iran, just hours before, Shourd had left prison with a police escort to face one last hurdle before her flight out, staying on message with the local media.
And I particularly want to address President Ahmadinejad and all of the Iranian officials and the religious leaders and thank them for this humanitarian gesture.
Then a bittersweet goodbye, since Shourd leaves behind in jail her 2 fellow Americans.
My first priority is to help my fiancé Shane Bauer and my friend Josh Fatale to gain their freedom because they don't deserve to be in prison anymore.
All 3 were last seen together in May when they were allowed a short visit with their mothers who had traveled to Iran from the United States. During that visit, Shourd announced she would marry Bauer, who, while in jail, had made an engagement ring with threads from his shirt. It was in July 2009 when the 3 Americans on a tour of the Middle East went hiking near a waterfall on the Iran-Iraq border. They were arrested for crossing into Iran illegally and sent to jail accused of spying. A year later, Sarah Shourd's mother made a special appeal for her daughter's release.
She has a precancerous condition, and I'm actually worried that this young woman's going to get cancer for real.
Iran's President Mahmoud Ahmadinejad may have heard that plea. He announced he'd free Shourd on Saturday. But the plan was delayed by his political enemies wanting to embarrass him. They insisted in the end on $500,000 bail. Sarah Shourd and her family know they're the lucky ones. There is no talk of bail or freedom for the other 2 American prisoners tonight, still in jail in Iran.
As for that $500,000 bail, well, the Shourd family says they didn't put up the money, and the U.S. government didn't either. So who really did remains a mystery. Katie?
Elizabeth Palmer, thank you. Alex Fatale is the brother of Josh Fatale, one of the 2 hikers still being held in Iran. Alex, what is your reaction to Sarah's release? I know all the families are very close.
Yeah, well, we're overjoyed to see her out. She's had a long and difficult detention, 14 months, solitary confinement, so it's wonderful that she is free. Of course, we wish she was out with Josh and Shane.
I know that it's been reported that the Iranians asked for $500,000 in bail for her release, and that money was deposited in an Iranian bank. Do you know who paid for this, if money exchanged hands?
We really don't have any information about that.
We see Josh in this photograph wearing the green T-shirt. Have you heard anything from Iranian officials about his possible release?
No, we haven't heard anything about that. The last thing he said to Sarah's mother, Nora, when the mothers were leaving Iran, was, "We're all brothers and sisters. Our families are all connected," and that's certainly true. You know, we share in Nora's joy and Sarah's joy and the fact that they can finally be in their embrace, and we just yearn for that as well.
Your mom last saw Josh in May. Any news about his condition? How was he doing then, and do you know anything about how he's doing now?
We have not heard from Sarah as to the latest on Josh and Shane. we're worried about their psychological condition. So long not knowing about their case is very difficult, the isolation that they've experienced. So we're worried about them. We continue to worry about their emotional well-being, and we really don't have any information.
Alex Fatale. Alex, thank you so much. Meanwhile, in this country, it is 7 weeks till the midterm elections with control of Congress at stake, and the primary season is coming to a close with contests today in 7 states as well as the District of Columbia. In one key race, Delaware's Republican Senate primary picked Congressman Mike Castle against Christine O'Donnell, who is backed by Sarah Palin and the Tea Party. The Republican establishment fears a victory by O'Donnell would jeopardize GOP's chances of winning back Vice President Biden's old seat and control of the Senate. And in New York City, 20-term Democratic Congressman Charles Rangel, facing ethics charges, is being challenged by Adam Clayton Powell IV. Now, a major development in a story we first reported earlier this summer about life insurance policies for members of the U.S. military and the company that provides them. Prudential has sold 6 million of the policies, but as Bloomberg Markets magazine revealed in its September issue, when a claim is filed, the money goes into a Prudential account, and the insurance company continues to collect interest on it. And now Bloomberg has discovered the government was aware of this and, in fact, signed off on it. Revelations that the country's second-largest life insurer was profiting from the death benefits of fallen soldiers was news to almost everyone, from military family members.
I was stunned to realize that, I had been duped.
To the Secretary of Defense.
I actually believed that the families of our fallen heroes got a check for the full amount.
But it wasn't news to the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs. In fact, in September of last year, the VA amended its contract with Prudential, ratifying what had been a 10-year-long verbal agreement to allow the insurance company to retain lump sum death benefits of soldiers and deposit that money into its own account.
VA has a very solemn obligation to make sure that for-profit companies do not take advantage of the government or grieving families.
Some beneficiaries who checked lump sum on this VA claim form expected to receive a check. Instead, they received a checkbook and a packet from Prudential saying the money has been placed in a secure, interest-bearing Alliance account. But the funds are held in the company's own general corporate account. Some years, Prudential earned almost 5% interest, while paying survivors less than 1%.
So from 1999 until 2009, a 10-year period, Prudential was sending out checkbooks, holding on to billions of dollars of survivors' money, even though the contract required them to send out checks.
Which may make the insurance giant vulnerable to lawsuits, according to at least one legal professor.
I think the policyholders have a great legal claim to get back the difference in the interest, and they may have a claim for punitive damages as well.
But Prudential insists an Alliance account is a lump sum distribution permitted under the contract, pointing out that beneficiaries can withdraw their money at any time. And at least one federal judge agreed, dismissing a claim last December. Nevertheless, the Department of Veterans Affairs today announced a list of reforms to its group life insurance programs, vowing to provide better clarity of payment options to the families of fallen soldiers. And for a list of the policy changes the VA is putting in place, you can go to our website, cbsnews.com. In other news, it is that time of year when kids get their pencils sharpened, shoes shined, and head back to school. And today, part of their curriculum was a pep talk from President Obama. The venue, the Masterman School in Philadelphia, ranked one of the top high schools in the country. His message, your future is in your hands.
And nothing, absolutely nothing, is beyond your reach. So long as you're willing to dream big, so long as you're willing to work hard, so long as you're willing to stay focused on your education, there is not a single thing that any of you cannot accomplish.
The president said the success of our students will help determine the success of the country. Now, if that's the case, we have plenty of homework to do if we want American schools to compete with others all around the world. Tonight, national correspondent Jim Axelrod launches our new series on education, reading, writing, and reform.
Let's go, let's go! In every town in America, the back-to-school rush is on. In Croton, New York, the Arturo brothers are already cracking the books.
For 3 children, for the amount of taxes we pay, I think we're getting a very good deal.
The public schools have done right by the Arturos.
That's a triangle.
But that's not the case across the board, says education consultant Mark Schneider.
Our top students are just not world class anymore.
That's right. Of 30 comparable countries, we rank near the bottom. Take math. Finland is first, followed by South Korea. And there we are, number 25. Same story in science. Finland, number 1 again. The U.S., number 21.
You look up here.
Where do we outrank the other countries? The amount we spend per student. Just over $129,000 from K to 12. The others average $95,000.
We have world-class expenditures and not world-class results.
For instance, when it comes to high school graduation rates, the U.S. is 20th on the list. Germany, Japan, South Korea, the U.K. all do better with graduation rates of 90% or more. Here, it's 75%. It's not so much that we slowed down during the last half a century. It's more that other countries sped up.
We need more octane now. The rest of the world is running faster than we are because they looked at what we did. They took what was good about us and added to it.
Education experts like Amy Wilkins say top-performing countries recruit teachers from the top of their college classes. South Korea, number 2 in math, gets teachers from the top 5% of graduating college seniors. Finland, number 1 in math and science, the top 10%.
The consensus is that the most important ingredient in what works is the quality of a student's teacher.
The U.S. has one of the shorter school years, 180 days versus 220 for South Korea. Research shows teachers spend up to 6 weeks reteaching what kids forgot over the summer. So a shorter break may be better.
We've gotten stuck in the old norms. The world has changed, and our schools have not kept up.
Now, the numbers suggest, might be the time for a new lesson plan. Jim Axelrod, CBS News, New York.
And one more note about education, a real milestone for women in this country. Last year, for the first time, women earned more doctorates than men did. Just over half of all PhDs went to women, so did 60% of master's degrees. Women were more likely to get advanced degrees in education and health sciences, while men were dominant in engineering, math, and computer science. And still ahead here on the CBS Evening News, a renowned photographer who got up close and personal with the leaders of the civil rights movement was actually an informant for the FBI. But up next, a CBS News exclusive. An oil leak devastated a Michigan town, but some say what the pipeline's owner did next just added to the disaster. While the country was focused on the disaster in the Gulf of Mexico this summer, there was another oil spill that got far less attention. A pipeline rupture in Michigan caused the biggest spill the Midwest has ever seen. Fish died, birds were covered in oil, and residents worried about their own health. Now those same residents are complaining about questionable tactics by the company that owns the pipeline. Our chief investigative correspondent, Armin Katayan, has this exclusive report.
Historic Marshall, Michigan has long been known as a fountain of old world charm. But now it's stuck in a river of trouble.
The full creek was solid, packed full of oil.
Solid.
Solid.
On the morning of July 26, part of the world's longest petroleum pipeline, stretching 1,900 miles between the U.S. and Canada, ruptured, pouring at least 800,000 gallons of crude into the waterways surrounding this scenic town, fouling the air with a noxious odor, threatening the water, and as seen in this home video, drenching local wildlife. Now that mess has turned into another one. The Canadian energy giant that owns the pipeline, Enbridge, is accused of deceptive tactics by dozens of homeowners affected by the spill.
They don't know what they're signing, and they sign away a lot of their rights if they don't know what they're signing.
In a joint investigation with the Center for Public Integrity, CBS News obtained these two documents. One is this settlement form. Some residents claim the company coerced them to sign it for a $300 air purifier and some evacuation expenses. in exchange releasing Enbridge from and against all liability, claims, and actions. The company disputes that. The other document was this release form, allowing Enbridge access to any and all medical records, one that had to be signed, residents claim, before Enbridge would pay for a visit to a clinic. Residents in this mobile home park charged they were deceived by Enbridge.
It was more or less sign your name here and, you're done.
Now the company's alleged actions have the head of a powerful congressional committee outraged.
This is exploitation of unknowing and unskilled people who've never had to face a situation like this before.
Terry Larson is a spokesperson for Enbridge.
Why in the world would you ask people of this community to sign those forms?
They're standard forms. There's nothing abnormal about those forms.
But the federal government says there's nothing standard about them, expressing concern in this letter that Enbridge's medical form authorized the disclosure of an inappropriately broad amount of medical information.
Are you familiar with the word that the Department of Health and Human Services used in conjunction with that form?
No.
Deplorable. That's the word they used.
Mm-hmm.
And what do you say to that?
Again, it's a standard form. I mean, our intent was good. Our intent was to do the right thing by the residents in these communities.
Enbridge now says it has discontinued using the forms and hired a former Detroit mayor to oversee the claims process. Still, Congressman Oberstar is calling for a federal investigation into this oily mess. Armin Katayan, CBS News, Marshall, Michigan.
There was a scare tonight at one of the world's most famous landmarks. The Eiffel Tower in Paris was evacuated after someone phoned in a bomb threat. 2,000 people were cleared out while police checked the tower. Later, across town, a metro station was evacuated because of a second bomb threat, but no devices were found at either location. In Amsterdam today, police arrested an airline pilot from the United States. They say he was drunk in the cockpit. He'd already pulled away from the gate with a jet full of passengers when the police, acting on a tip, intercepted the plane. The police did not identify the airline, but Delta canceled a flight from Amsterdam to Newark, saying a member of the crew was, quote, unfit for duty. For a college football player, nothing compares to winning the Heisman Trophy, but Reggie Bush said today he's giving his back. No one has ever done that before. Now an NFL star, Bush won the 2005 Heisman while playing at USC. Investigators later found he accepted improper gifts from agents while at the school. This past June, the NCAA stripped USC of 14 victories, games that Bush played in, including a national championship. President Obama has already authored 2 bestsellers. Now he's coming out with a children's book. It's called Of Thee I Sing, A Letter to My Daughters, and it tells the stories of 13 groundbreaking Americans, including George Washington and Jackie Robinson. The book is due out in November, and if you're wondering when the president found time to write it, the publisher says he finished the manuscript before he took office. We'll be right back. We end tonight with a surprising postscript to history. Mark Strassman tells us a photographer who documented the civil rights movement and won the trust of its leaders was also apparently spying on them for the FBI.
In the 1960s fight for civil rights, images like these helped Dr. Martin Luther King win his movement. Powerful images, poignant images, and others intimate. All the work of the late Ernest Withers, considered the original civil rights photographer.
Well, he was one of the best photographers that you want to know, and loved the movement.
Or did he? The Memphis Commercial Appeal has unearthed secret FBI files. Withers was also a paid snitch, selling information and photographs to the feds. One entry, Dr. King checked into the Lorraine Motel prior to going to a strategy meeting. It was April 3rd, 1968, the day before King was murdered. The files refer to Withers as ME 338R. The R stood for racial informant.
It's an act of betrayal to even let the FBI think that they could get someone from among us to do us harm.
In the late 60s, FBI Director J. Edgar Hoover seemed determined to destroy Dr. King. Everyone within the movement's leadership knew it.
We always operated under the assumption that we were under the microscope and that our telephones were tapped.
Withers marched with Dr. King, ate with him, sat in on strategy sessions with leaders of the movement. A known and trusted face, he had access and a camera.
Withers' daughter is as shocked as anyone.
Out of character for my father. That's not a representative of who he was as a man and what he stood for.
Memphis plans to open an Ernest Withers Museum next month. His photos so powerfully clear, but not his motives. Mark Strassman, CBS News, Atlanta.
And that is the CBS Evening News for tonight. I'm Katie Couric. Thank you for watching. I'll see you tomorrow. Good night.